Welcome to the Flow with Your Cycle mini-series, where we're going to be going through each phase of the menstrual cycle, talking about energy levels, hormones, self-care, and the all-important yoga and meditation that will help you get through all the symptoms you experience in each phase. Knowledge is power, and this is the cheat sheet guide to your menstrual cycle that you wish you had when you were a teenager. So let's get into it. So we're starting at the top. Our period, so the menstrual phase of our menstrual cycle. So this is the phase when we are bleeding, and this starts on day one. So day one of your period will be day one that your menstrual cycle begins, and it will usually last about 4 days, but some people can experience it to 5 to 7 days of their cycle. During this time, obviously, we're having heavy bleeding, we're quite low in mood, menstrual cramps, swollen breasts, low back pain, and some other symptoms that you might experience during your menstruation that I'm sure you're very aware of. And there's two main hormones that are governing our menstrual cycle, estrogen and progesterone. And at the time of our menstruation, these both are at their lowest. So progesterone declining is what causes the uterine lining to start to shed, and that is our bleeding. So that is when our period begins, when we start to shed that lining away. There is so much going on physiologically during this phase. This is not the time to push through and get things done. This is the time to slow down, to reflect, and to really nurture yourself through this period phase. So we're going to talk about sort of some different perspectives of our menstrual cycle, and one of them is an Ayurvedic perspective by Dr. Robert Svoboda. If I say his name correctly, he will be in the show notes. And Ayurveda is basically a sister science of yoga, and what Dr. Robert did is he came up with this theory about the menstrual phase, so our period, being like a cleansing of our body. So something called Ama, which is like built up toxin and waste in our body, is released during our period. So all the build up from the month are released and cleansed out when we're bleeding. And there's something called Apana in yoga, which is a downward moving energy. And so when we are bleeding, we don't recommend inversions, and the reason for that is because if you imagine all the waste is trying to sort of flow down, the apana, that downward moving energy to cleanse our bodies, when we're inverted, we're literally working against that natural moving downward energy, which is releasing those toxins, which is why we don't recommend inversions during menstruation. So we're going to move on now to another sort of perspective of the menstrual cycle, and that is by Anna Davis, a yoga teacher, who likens our menstrual cycle to the lunar cycle, so the cycle of the moon. And what's really interesting about this is when you look into it, the similarities between the lunar cycle and a female menstrual cycle are undeniable. The average length for both is 29.5 days. So that's the average length of the cycle for both the moon and the average for the woman's menstrual cycle. So they have undeniable similarities. And what Anna Davis does is she talks about the reflection of each of our phase with the 4 phases of the lunar cycle. Again, we have 4 phases, and so does the moon. And for each of these episodes in this series, we're going to talk about which moon phase is related to which menstrual cycle phase that we're talking about. So we are talking about menstruation, the start of our cycle, and this is reflective of the dark moon phase for the lunar cycle. So this is when there is literally, it's darker, there's less light, less outward energy. And that is exactly how we feel as women on our menstrual cycle. We turn inward, we have lower energy, we're less social, less outgoing, and we're working on cleansing our bodies and really tapping into that nurturing ourselves. And I always think of the dark moon as kind of the moon's hiding away. And I think that's quite similar and reflective of what we're like on our menstrual phase of our cycle. So it's really interesting to see the links between those two things. And as I said, we're going into a little bit more detail for each phase, how it's reflective of the moon. And this doesn't mean that your cycle will literally mirror the lunar cycle, because of course, women's bodies are different and cycle lengths vary from month to month. But it's a really nice perspective and kind of metaphor for the menstrual cycle that we experience. So that's why it's really nice to look into it and to just see that natural reflection in something that just happens. You know, it's pure nature and it's happening without any other factors. It dark, it wanes, it's full, it's waxing, you know, it goes through those 4 distinct phases just like we do, so naturally. So that's why it's a really nice metaphor for our cycle. Going back to this kind of getting rid of the waste and this downward energy for our period, you'll notice that if you have a really stressful month leading up to your period is probably going to be affected. It may be late, you may be a couple of days late, you may have heavier bleeding. I know for me that my menstrual cramps are a lot worse when I've had stress building up to it. And this is just another example of how the stress that we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis can massively impact our menstrual cycle. I do have a podcast episode on that. So I will pop a link in at the moment so you can click through and listen to that at the end, all about stress in our cycle and fertility. But we'll find that we can't remove as much of that stress that's built up, because we really do hold stress quite physically, although it's a psychological emotion, and we hold it in our muscles. So as we know, when we're tense, when we're stressed, we feel tension. We can hold that in our shoulder, our neck and our back. As women, though, we can also hold it in our abdomen and our pelvis. And these are the muscles that are contracting and working during our period. So if there's extra tension in those muscles from stress, then the cramping is going to be worse and those pains that you experience can be more intense. So there is that direct link between stress and how you experience your cycle, which is why it's really, really important to look after yourself, to slow down and to manage that stress effectively. Another nice and natural reflection to compare our cycle to is, of course, the seasons of the year. So often our menstrual cycle will be referred to, so our menstruation, this phase, will be referred to as winter, and then we'll move follicular phase is our spring, ovulation is our summer, and then our premenstrual, our luteal phase is autumn. So we'll be talking about that, how it reflects the seasons of the year, and how that really matches and aligns with your natural feminine energy. So let's move on to yoga for this menstrual phase of our cycle. So this is really the time to slow down. So gentle yoga, restorative yoga, which is using props to stay in poses for longer periods of time, are really nice ways to still move and still exercise, but without pushing through and sort of doing more like a cardio or higher intensity workout. We want to save those for later in our cycle when we're naturally matching that energy that we'll feel. We are not going to have high amounts of energy during our period, and that's okay. But if you don't want to just rest and you still want to do exercise, which is really good for you to do, then gentle yoga is the answer. There are also poses in yoga that can relieve that low back pain, relieve your menstrual cramps, and support you when you're bleeding heavily. So I will also link a yoga practice for your period that I've created on YouTube, and you can go along, save it for the next time you're on your period. It's suitable mostly for day 1 or 2 when your cramps are quite bad and your bleeding is still quite heavy. It's really gentle, it's slow, but it still feels like you're moving with your body and you're still doing something, rather than maybe just sitting or resting. You're still getting that exercise in, but it's supporting and aligning, most importantly, with the energy that your body is feeling. So that's the recommended yoga for your period. Check out the video and, like I say, save it for next time you're on. Lastly, before we wrap up, we're going to talk about self-care during your period. So this is such a crucial part. And like I said at the start, this is a time to turn inward and to nurture yourself. So self-care that is really effective during your period will be long hot baths, drinking caffeine-free tea like raspberry leaf tea, reading, resting, journaling, and saying no to social plans. This is not the phase of your cycle when you're really going to feel outward and social, and that's okay. I give you permission to set that boundary and to tie your social plans to your cycle when you can, and to align with that social energy that your body will be feeling. Hot water bottles or heated that you can put in the microwave on your low back and on your abdomen are really nice if you're experiencing cramps or discomfort there. There are yoga poses you can do, and you can just pop the heat pack along your low back while you're in that pose. That can be really restorative and really nice to do. So whatever feels good for you, as long as you're slowing down and you're just seeing it as time to take care of you. Your body is doing so much during this phase. There's so much going on that it's okay to slow down, to take care of yourself, and to just do things that make you feel good, make you feel calm, and align with your low energy. So that when your energy starts to build up and pick up, which it will in the other phases, you've taken care of yourself and you've sort of protected that low energy so that you can use your energy further along in the cycle, because you're not running on an energy deficit throughout your period. So it's really crucial. This sets the tone for your cycle. The start of your cycle is your period, and what you do and how you take care of yourself during this phase really sets the tone and has a knock-on effect for the other phases of the cycle. Next up will be our follicular phase. So our energy is starting to build up, we're starting to feel a bit better, and we're going to discuss how it reflects the moon phases, self-care yoga, and other things that you need to know about your follicular phase. So I will see you in the next one. Take care. Thanks for listening all the way through this episode of the 30 Something Shift podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it and got something valuable from it. Don't forget to subscribe below so that you get the next episode. They'll be dropping weekly, as well as all my yoga and meditation practices.